All right. Okay. So good afternoon. My name is Violeta Mora. I'm with the San Diego County Office of Education, Student Wellness and School Culture Department. And I'm going to have my counterpart here introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Roxanne Bellamy. I'm also with San Diego County Office of Education, Student Wellness and School Culture. Welcome.
All right. So it's our pleasure to welcome you in this virtual platform and thank you for joining us, especially on a Wednesday afternoon today for this presentation on healthy teen relationships and violence prevention in schools. So today's presentation is prepared by the TDV Committee, which is a multi-agency collaboration between K-12 and post-secondary education, Health and Human Services Agency, law enforcement, nonprofits, and our community partners. And our office is part of this committee. So we've hosted a February training during Teen Dating Violence and Awareness Month for several years now. And this time the committee surveyed districts and schools like counselors, social workers, administrators, nurses, and teachers throughout San Diego County to identify teen dating violence related topics that you want to learn more about. And these topics are included in today's training. And now I'm going to hand it over to our presenters for today.
Thank you for that introduction, Violeta. I'm one of the presenters today. My name is Allison Huerta. I work at Vista Community Clinic as a program supervisor where I oversee a domestic violence prevention program. And I'm also the chair of the Teen Dating Violence Committee. I really love the work that I've been doing over the past 2 years, and I'm excited to share what I've learned with all of you today. So thank you for being here. And now I'll let Ariel and Vale introduce themselves as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ariel Kovacs, pronouns she, her. I'm the Director of Prevention, Education, and Advocacy Services at Center for Community.
You need help with your homework? For one teacher.
Hey everyone, my name is Vale Magana. I use they, them pronouns, and I am the school-based coordinator
What are you doing right now?
at Center for Community Solutions.
All right, thank you both for introducing yourselves. So we'll be kind of passing off the presentation between the three of us, but we hope that you learned something new today. So last year when we did this presentation, we titled it a teen dating violence presentation for educators, but we really wanted to switch the language this year because we're trying to shift more to using language that focuses on healthy relationships. And I'm not sure about Ariel and Vale, but I know for myself, when I use the language around healthy relationships, students tend to be more receptive to it. It's funny, my students that I work with, I told them it was Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, and they were like, "What's teen dating violence?" And I was like, "Well, that's why we talk about healthy relationships." And they're like, "Oh, okay." So we really are trying to make that shift to using more positive language when we talk about this, especially as teens are more receptive to that. So as Violeta shared at the beginning, the Teen Dating Violence Committee is one of the subcommittees of the San Diego Domestic Violence Council. And we are an interdisciplinary team, and we have members from all different sectors. We have people from Health and Human Services, different nonprofits, education. We've even had like parents of teens who have survived unhealthy or teen dating violence situations and unhealthy relationships join us before. So anyone who's interested in joining, we welcome you to join. And our goal as a committee is to empower our communities to prevent and intervene in teen dating violence in our schools and communities. Violeta also mentioned that we had a chance this year to survey educators to see what topics you all want to learn about during this presentation. So the main topics that we saw were in demand for this presentation were teen dating violence prevention in the classroom, which is going to be our first section. We also saw a desire for people to learn about how to intervene in a situation of teen dating violence, as well as how to partner with parents to support their teens. I know that's a question you all get a lot. You have parents coming to you asking how they can support their students. So we want to give you some tools to be able to support those parents as well. And then finally, we're going to share current resources available to the community so you all know what next steps to take. And when we talk about teen dating violence, we do want to give a definition just so that we're all on the same page about what we're talking about. So teen dating violence is a pattern of violent, coercive, or manipulative behaviors used to gain power and maintain control over another person in a relationship. So this is very similar to domestic violence, but we also want to acknowledge that there are some things that are going to look different in a teen dating violence situation versus a domestic violence situation, just because of life stage and other factors that teens might experience that adults might not experience, and then the other way around as well. So some examples of manipulative and coercive behaviors may include power dynamics in a relationship where one person is controlling all the decisions, or also it can be things like name calling and put downs that intentionally damage self-esteem or other relationships. And while abuse and violence can happen in person and online, it includes physical, sexual, emotional, verbal, and financial violence, as well as stalking. And with that, I will pass things over to Vale to talk about teen dating violence prevention in the classroom.
Thanks, Allison. So as 67% of y'all requested, we'll be talking about teen dating violence prevention in the classroom. And in this section, we'll cover what are protective factors and how we can create safe spaces in schools. Next slide. So protective factors are conditions or characteristics that reduce the negative impact of challenging situations and promote well-being. Protective factors support people's ability to thrive even when they face challenges. In the context of violence prevention, education, protective factors play a crucial role in helping individuals, families, and communities develop resiliency. Protective factors work by creating an environment where positive outcomes are more likely, even in the face of adversity. To effectively promote violence prevention, it's essential to focus not only on reducing risk factors like exposure to violence or poverty, but also on strengthening protective factors. Interventions that encourage personal growth, like building problem-solving skills, social and emotional learning skills, help foster a positive parent and child or youth and adult relationships, which can significantly reduce the likelihood of future violence. It's also important to note that protective factors listed here on this slide are interconnected, meaning that strengthening one often strengthens the others. Which ultimately creates a ripple effect that benefits the overall well-being of all survivors. And when survivors feel safe, supported, and capable, they're also more likely to overcome challenges and thrive. So now I want to look at protective factors more in a more detailed manner. Creating safer and more stable conditions involves having a safe and steady environment where youth don't have to feel like they're constantly worrying about danger or instability. For students, this can mean having a safe home to live in, such as having stable housing and access to resources that they need to get through school and personal growth. Another protective factor listed is social, cultural, and spiritual connections, which focuses on having a strong support system. So this includes close friends, family members, or people within your community that you can turn to for advice or understanding, or just being able to talk to someone when things get tough. So when we can build peer networks, peer groups, team sports, student clubs, that space becomes a really powerful space to get youth on the same page who have similar interests or backgrounds, which then helps create a more interconnected community, which can also help reduce violence. A resilience and a growth mindset is the second protective factor listed here. And it's all about being able to bounce back from any setbacks Having a growth mindset means believing that you can improve with effort and learning, which can help teens and youth keep going even when times are tough. Instead of thinking, I can't do this, a growth mindset can help youth into shifting and believing that if I keep trying, then I can get better at this. Our fourth protective factor is nurturing parent and child interactions or youth and adult interactions. So having healthy relationships with parents, caregivers, guardians makes a huge difference. Teens who feel loved and supported at home are more likely to have higher self-esteem and also manage stress better. And opening up those lines of communication can really help youth feel like they're being cared for, which is really important. And then the last factor that I'll talk about is social and emotional abilities. This refers to learning to manage our emotions, understanding others, and being able to communicate how we are feeling. In regards to our relationships and our school life. And right, relationships don't only have to be romantic, but can also include friendships, relationships to ourselves, and things of that nature. Yeah, that's a quick little rundown of protective factors, and then I'll shift into protective factor domains next. So protective factors, they exist on different levels or domains, which are listed here. On this slide, the different domains that exist are individual, interpersonal, community, and societal. Together, these help individuals cope with adversity. For example, personal qualities like self-esteem or problem-solving skills can serve as protective factors at the individual level. And at the community level, access to resources and support networks such as cultural groups or social services can help individuals access the resources they need to overcome hardships. Boosting protective factors in schools can significantly contribute to creating a safer and more supportive environment for students. By focusing on the individual, interpersonal, community, and societal domains, schools can foster resiliency, positive behaviors, and a sense of belonging. We do violence prevention. We at Center for Community Solutions do violence prevention education at High Tech High in Point Loma and the network of schools there. And they have a program called High Five Heroes, and that is, an example of how schools can practice implementing protective factors. So the High Five Heroes is a program which recognizes students for good deeds, which then ultimately helps youth feel valued and motivated to continue to do good. And teachers then also serve as mentors who offer guidance and emotional support, which can then again boost protective factors such as resiliency and a growth mindset. One of the teachers that I work with, he specifically likes to say, I have to know my kids to teach them. And this suggests that teachers who are invested in being mentors to their students can build a really powerful bond. And it encourages students to take pride in their abilities and build those healthy relationships in a way that's positive. And then on the broader level, community and societal protective factors in schools can be enhanced through peer groups, sports, or affinity groups, like affinity groups being based on identities, like perhaps like the Gay Straight Alliance or MECHA for Latinx students. These groups can help promote teamwork, cooperation, inclusivity, while also creating spaces for students to express their identity and connect with others who share similar experiences and backgrounds. Initiatives like Sources of Strength that exists at High Tech help build protective, or rather help build peer networks of support fostering a sense of community, while anti-bullying campaigns can help shift societal norms and reduce violence by promoting respect and kindness. So again, these are examples of the protective factors as they exist within school settings. And here are two photos that come from our violence prevention workshops that we run. Violence prevention education in the classroom plays a crucial role in breaking the cycle of violence by equipping students with knowledge and skills they need to recognize, to address unhealthy behaviors before they escalate. At Center for Community Solutions, we do this by integrating this type of education in classrooms by teaching students about healthy versus unhealthy relationships, consent, social norms, and bystander intervention. For example, students learn the importance of clear communication and mutual respect in relationships, as well as the difference between healthy behaviors like active listening and boundary setting, and then more harmful behaviors like manipulation, power, and control. CCS prevention programs focus on empowering students to recognize and intervene when they witness unhealthy behaviors, again, hoping to shift the culture at the school. And our goal with providing this education is to help create a generation of young people who are not only aware of the signs of violence, but who also feel confident in their ability to stand up for themselves and others in difficult situations. Next slide. Thank you. So when we think about creating safe spaces, some of the work that we're doing at High Tech and the network of schools there is creating safe space for queer and questioning youth, which is critical again to fostering an inclusive and supportive environment within schools. One of the effective ways to do this is through safe zone signage, which identifies queer allies and provides visible support for LGBTQ students. Safe zone signage signals to students that certain spaces, such as classrooms, counselor's office, or common areas, are welcoming and non-judgmental to queer and questioning youth. When students see that staff members and peers have made an effort to signal their allyship, it helps create an atmosphere where students feel safer to express their true selves, ask for help, or simply exist without fear, discrimination, or harassment. At High Tech, we've made efforts to create inclusive spaces extending beyond classroom signage to include practical changes like establishing a consistent bathroom policy that reflects the needs of the student regardless of their gender identity. So that's what this first photo here is an example of. It says gender exclusive bathroom key at the front desk. So this is a key that students can ask for to access the gender inclusive restroom. And by adding this clear and visible signage, that marks the bathroom as gender neutral, we're hoping that students will feel more empowered to use the facilities without worrying and having a fear of being misgendered or facing, uncomfortable situations. Because ultimately, when students feel accepted and supported for who they are, regardless of their gender identity or sexual orientation, it reduces the likelihood of bullying, harassment, and violence. By addressing the need for safe and inclusive spaces, schools can take proactive steps towards preventing violence before it occurs. And these efforts ultimately contribute to creating a positive school climate where, again, all students feel valued and protected, with the goal of hopefully reducing the overall risk to violence.
All right. We're going to shift into another highly requested section on the survey, which is intervening in teen dating violence situations. So we're going to talk about some warning signs, some intervention barriers and techniques, and then also potential disclosures or how to have conversations with young people. As a reminder, if folks have questions, you can add those to the chat. We will have a Q&A section at the very end, but I know sometimes holding on to it to the end can be hard, so you can put it in the chat and we'll address it at the end. All right, so let's talk through some potential warning signs. Oftentimes when we think about warning signs or learn about warning signs, we're learning about warning signs for sexual violence specifically or sexual assault. Those things might look like inappropriate behavior, especially when it's stark or out of character, complaints about pain or aches, particularly in like an abdominal region, fear or avoidance of a formerly safe person, frequent UTIs, unexplained injuries, or recreating trauma scenarios in play. Those are often ones that educators or folks who work with young people might hear about as potential warning signs that are kind of specific to physical or sexual violence. But today, if you want to click, I really want to focus on some teen dating violence warning signs that may be a little bit less commonly talked about, and honestly, maybe a little bit harder to even identify. I want to name right up front that teens are emotional and have mood swings and change their mind a lot. And that makes a lot of these signs kind of challenging sometimes. However, out of character behavior that mirrors a specific person or a partner, if you know that they're in a relationship with someone and you see them mirroring behavior, that could be a sign. Potentially isolation from friends. So if they had a close group of friends that they're all of a sudden not talking to and maybe kind of isolating themselves and only spending time with one person or a partner. Changes in schedule or activities, particularly, again, when they're mirroring just a specific person. So, if they were really involved in after school activities or activities that person wasn't involved in, and all of a sudden those things kind of start to go away. Being worried about a partner's thoughts or reactions, or needing to check in with a partner could all be things to kind of question the power dynamics in the relationship, right? These are not things that mean that someone's definitely in a violent or harmful relationship. However, they are things that you could be curious about, and could potentially be signs that someone is in a relationship where power isn't equal. It can be really difficult for folks to come out and talk about things that are happening, especially when they're young and they may not even recognize that power dynamics are off. And so as adults supporting young people, it's really important that we are keeping an eye out and are questioning things when we're seeing something that's curious or something that could potentially be an early sign of harm or behaviors. All right. So some techniques for intervention. When we do bystander intervention training, these 4 D words on the right-hand side are what we typically teach as strategies for bystander intervention. Obviously, these are going to look different in every situation, but they are a helpful tool to think through if we see something that we're like, maybe I should say something or intervene in some way. What are kind of the tactics or strategies I might use? So the 4 Ds, as we call them, are direct. So directly speaking to the person who is either causing harm or is being potentially harmed. Distract, or, have some create a stop or a pause in maybe what you're witnessing or what's happening so that you could maybe check in at another time. Delegate. Oftentimes when we teach this to young people, they assume that delegate means that they're delegating to an adult, right? You go tell a teacher, you go tell a trusted adult. And that might be true for adults as well. There may be delegation to an administrator if the level of need calls for it. But delegate can also look like talking with other people who are close to that student, being like, hey, I noticed this thing. Have you noticed this? Or like, have you had a conversation with this person? It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to elevate it to someone in power, but really delegating it to somebody who maybe has a different relationship and could be more impactful in their communication. And then finally, delay, collecting information, taking note. If you like notice something, you like write down a little reminder to yourself to maybe like check on that again or see if the behavior continues. And then on the left-hand side here, we have an escalation of violence curve. This was adapted from Mia Mingus's Transformative Justice intro webinar. And we use this to really, build into folks that early prevention is key, right? All of those protective factors that Vale just went through really happen before there's an escalation in violence. So some of those like early warning signs, we maybe have a conversation where we're curious about it before we're seeing harm happen. Because as time goes on, violence could escalate to a point where then maybe you are having to intervene in a more serious way or escalating things to, parents or administration or taking more control of a situation than just having a conversation with someone or helping someone to recognize potentially harmful patterns or behaviors. Some barriers to intervention. So there are many reasons why someone might not intervene. Some common reasons that we often hear are the bystander effect, thinking someone else will intervene or do something. Potentially not caring about the victim's identity or not thinking that that person has the potential to be in a harmful relationship. So this one can get tricky. So people are like, what do you mean? I care if anyone's in a harmful relationship. And while that may be true, sometimes we have internal biases that make us think that someone who maybe has a disability couldn't possibly be in a harmful relationship because they wouldn't be in a relationship to begin with. So really checking some of those potentially blind spots or biases. Being afraid for one's own safety, not wanting to stand out, fear of being labeled a snitch, or the classic, it's not my business. And while all of these are kind of ones that we often hear when we do bystander intervention training, I wanted to talk a little bit about potential barriers in a school setting. And I'm wondering if in the chat, folks could add some potential barriers that might occur when you're in a school setting and you're seeing potential teen dating violence. It'd be super helpful for us to hear from you, not just because we're curious, but also we do this every year and want to really be able to respond and answer to things that folks are seeing in schools specifically. Y'all are the experts in this. So feel free to drop those in the chat. But a few that we came up with, we're questioning if it requires intervention. So maybe not really being sure if something is a problem, if something is just kids messing around, not really sure how to intervene while maintaining rapport. So potentially not wanting to harm a relationship that you have with a student by asking questions or pointing out a pattern of behavior. Time and resources. School staff do the most. Y'all do the most. Taking time to support and intervene can be a big challenge, particularly in the fast-paced school day, week, month. Like there isn't a lot of time to like pause and sit down and have a very open conversation with folks. And then also thinking someone else will handle it, especially when we are talking about high school, folks share kids, right? Like teenagers go from class to class. You might think that someone else has a closer relationship or a coach might be seeing the behavior more and they might be the ones to intervene. And that could just be solved by having a conversation with that other person and maybe delegating that. I see in the chat, those are similar to the barriers that we experience. I've struggled with interpreting the mindset that a possessive partner is one who truly madly loves you. yeah, social norms really do set some folks up for failure in thinking that, it's a compliment to have a controlling power or behavior, right? We see that all the time in movies and TV of this like possessive, obsessive love is like romantic. So it can be hard to sometimes support young people in like breaking some of those norms. Thank you so much for sharing. If you think of others, you can continue to put them in. But let's keep it moving. So in terms of intervention, we also wanted to talk about hotlines and support. So we often think of hotlines as a place that someone would call if they were in a crisis or if they themselves needed resources or materials. However, hotlines are actually for everyone. They're a source of a lot of information and knowledge and resources. And so I really want to encourage not just you all, but when you're talking to parents, when you're talking to young people, like you can call or text hotlines and really get answers to a lot of questions and do so anonymously. So some folks, a barrier to calling a hotline might be not knowing what happens when you call. Most hotlines, like I said, provide answers and resources, and they're anonymous. So you don't need to give your information in order to ask questions on a hotline. That can be really helpful information to share with someone who maybe wants to talk through something that's happening to themselves or a friend, but doesn't want to do so in a way that could get somebody in trouble, for example. And then we have some examples of things that folks could ask a hotline. So, asking what happens if someone calls law enforcement in this situation, or asking if a specific situation is, a crime or something that like could get the police or law enforcement called, asking for local resources, um, asking for how to support someone in a situation. You can give as many details or as few details as you want. But there are experts who spend their entire livelihoods really working to end relationship harm and violence, and they might have additional, supports that you might not have thought of. All right, so you click next. Common barriers to disclosing. A lot of people like worry about not being believed. People think that someone's making it up, being blamed for the abuse, being told it's not a big deal. These are especially common for young people, right? Like, oh, it's just puppy love. Oh, they'll grow out of it. Maybe not knowing if what happened was sexual assault or abuse. Not acting how a survivor is supposed to act, or having their experience discounted because of their age, gender, sexuality, or other identities. Can you go to the next one? This is additionally super common when we're talking about young people. So, in addition to potentially they feel like they might not be believed, they also usually don't want to get other people in trouble, right? And so being labeled a snitch or someone who is getting potentially friends or loved ones in trouble, and being intimidated by punitive systems of those in power. Socialized compliance, right? We like teach young people to follow certain norms and guidelines, and sometimes they might be breaking some of those rules. And so they think that the abuse is their fault, right? Like, well, I know I shouldn't have snuck out of my house, so I got what I deserved. When we know that that's not true, no one deserves to be harmed. Myths about consent and boundaries. That's why primary prevention education is so important. A lot of people care about their partner. This is for teens and adults, right? When we're talking about relationship violence, people really care about the person that is harming them. And they might have a limited or lack of language to describe what happened. So they may just not have the words to talk about what the power and control dynamics of their relationship are in a way that they feel like is expressing what they're feeling or what they're experiencing. So now that we've talked a little bit about defining the harm, we're going to move into talking about how to talk about it. So when we talk about disclosure, we often think about the biggest or heaviest forms of abuse. I really want to encourage you to consider even seemingly small or petty forms of harm as potential disclosures when coming from youth. This will help us intervene early because what we're talking about isn't necessarily somebody sharing, that they have been assaulted or like physically abused. But a lot of times when people are talking about what's happening for them, they're sharing little signs of harm that can really build into something that becomes abuse or becomes violent. Um, so when we are handling disclosures or having conversations with young people, the first thing that I want to be really clear about is making sure that folks share their reporting status and what reporting might look like. So being really clear, if you are a mandated reporter, what that means. Making sure that folks know that as they're engaging in that conversation. And you can be clear about what would or wouldn't trigger a call and like what that looks like or means. So we have some language here in the quotations that are offerings for folks to use. So as we have this conversation, I want you to know that I am a mandated reporter, which means if I think that you are in danger, I am legally mandated to report abuse in order to keep you safe. And what abuse, like what that means and looks like, is something that you should refer back to your school policies around mandated reporting. But just making sure that you're being clear. Asking clarifying questions from a place of curiosity and not judgment. So really trying to, it's easy to hear someone share, especially to hear teenagers talk about relationships and feel like, oh my God. But really trying to come from a place of curiosity and asking them questions about how they feel about what they just shared, or who else maybe did they share that information with. Validating, offering resources, providing clarity. Again, that language of you deserve to be safe. No one deserves to be harmed. You deserve to have a loving relationship. Those can be really meaningful and impactful, regardless of what young people are sharing. And then using words or phrases that offer impact and invite empowerment and choice. So really encouraging young people to think about what choices are best for them. Oftentimes, a gut reaction in relationship violence is to be like, okay, you're making bad decisions. I'm going to tell you what decisions to make so that you can make the right decisions and get on the right track. And while that might feel like you see the clear path and that's the easiest solution, when we're talking about relationship violence, because it's really rooted in that power and control dynamic, having you make the decision puts them back in a situation where they're not empowered in making their own decisions and will likely not follow through with them, right? We know that in all relationships, but particularly for young people, being told like, okay, this is the right way to handle this is going to be less impactful than inviting that empowerment and choice. And then if someone discloses harm, this is our simple 6 tips for, how to support or respond. Listen and believe them. Validate that what happened or is happening is not okay, deserved, or their fault. Share your concerns and that you're here to talk if they're ready. Empower and respect their choices. Offer resources if they want them. And remember that you are not alone. You can also ask for help. You can also call hotlines. You can also reach out to other folks. All right. This next section, we're going to move through pretty quickly. And this is about partnering with parents to support students. So we're going to have a couple of different slides with resources. As a reminder, this is being recorded. We're going to put the PDF up. But you can also, take pictures with your phone or screenshots if that is what works for you for these next few slides. So we know that one big thing that parents are often asking us about is how to have conversations with their young people. So we've developed this Start the Convo tips for adults. These are things that you can do for yourself and use as like a person who works with young people, but these are also things that you can offer to parents. So our first couple of tips here are to really start for yourself. So checking in with yourself, thinking about like what kind of messaging or conversations you've had about relationships, particularly as a young person, how that might come into play as you're talking with the young people in your life. How might it impact your view on healthy or unhealthy relationships? Creating a space, so being intentional about when or where you bring up conversations. A lot of times as adults, if we're like, okay, I'm going to have this conversation with this young person, I'm going to think about where I'm going to be and where I'm going to sit and all the right things to say and do. And what we consistently find actually works best is like, as you're driving to school, casually having a conversation, not sitting someone down and being like, okay, I'm going to ask you these questions about relationships while we're sitting here staring at each other, because that can add pressure. Again, being clear about mandated reporting if you're somebody who is a mandated reporter and having these conversations, and then being curious, right? Really trying to not have our adult hats on of like, I have 30 plus years on you, I know what I'm talking about, but really trying to be curious and remind ourselves of the unique teenage experience. Click to the next one. So these topics and prompts were developed in partnership with the Valor Coalition of California. And they came out with like this sheet of car conversations. So we took some tips from there and worked with our community partners here in San Diego, and then also got feedback from youth. So last year at a DVAM event, we had students help us word some of these and help us come up with like, what are some questions that you would be interested in having conversations, like prompting conversations with the adults in your life. So we bucketed them into categories. We have questions for healthy relationships, cultural considerations, and safety. I'm not going to go through all of these, but we do have, like I said, access to these, and this can be an offering that you can offer parents of like, start having conversations, start small. Prompt with, what do you see as relationship goals and why? So that you can then have some of those deeper conversations if you start to see harm. And then on the next one, we have gender, warning signs of abuse, and consent. These are often things that we shy away from having conversations about, but they really don't have to be things that are scary or open a can of worms, right? Like, how do you approach feelings of jealousy? Right? That's an easy question that we can have a conversation about that may open up like potential red flags or potential areas of growth for the young people in our lives. And then, we often experience like we have a hotline at CCS, we have walk-ins, we often talk with parents or folks who have loved ones that are experiencing harm. These are some tips that we've come up with as a listener of somebody who's maybe hearing about a situation. Supporting them in just being a listening ear, being empathetic and validate that person's feelings, asking clarifying questions or open-ended questions to kind of support with them talking through what's going on or make sure you're understanding what they're asking for. Avoiding comments like don't be upset or everything will be okay. And don't judge or assume that we know how the person thinks, feels, or wants, right? Um, really asking like, what next steps do you see? Or like in what ways do you want to handle this? So that we can show up in a supportive way. And then we have some resources. We're going to go into a resources section next, but particularly for parents and caregivers. A reminder that parents can call hotlines. There are experts that can help talk through challenges. People can be anonymous. That's a way around that time resource because I know teachers and school staff do not have time to talk to every parent who has a situation going on. There's two websites here, loveisrespect.org. They have a parent page of resources, and then ntab.org has a blog with tech safety, including a few like 5-minute parent guides. And then really, again, encouraging parents to start building conversations around relationship health from an early age, right? Having some of those conversations so that if they start to see harmful things, they already have a baseline for some of those protective factors.
Awesome. Thank you, Valerie and Ariel, for sharing all of that wonderful information. And Ariel, I love especially how you had the resource listed in the last slide that specifically focused on digital communication, because I saw in the chat someone shared how digital communication can hide signs of teen dating violence. And especially in this day and age, young people are always on their different devices and communicating with people digitally. So it is really important that we are sharing resources for people who have more questions about that, especially for parents who want to support their students better. So for our final section, we are going to be talking about current resources available to schools and in the community. This was highly, highly requested. I think it gets requested every time we do presentations. So we know that you all are looking for resources, you want to support your students, and you want to know what you can do to help. So we wanted to start by connecting you all to educational resources. And the first resource that I'm going to share with you all is actually an in-house resource. So the San Diego Teen Dating Violence Committee has partnered with the San Diego County Office of Education to provide you all with a web page that focuses specifically on teen dating violence prevention. So on this website, we update it with different resources that we create. We have infographics, we have recorded webinars. We're able to link you to other resources that we have in the community. And also you can get connected to the Teen Dating Violence Committee through this webpage. And Violetta just dropped the link in the chat just now. You're about to get a lot of links in the chat, so get ready to save things to have a million tabs open in your browser. But this is a really great resource that I highly encourage all of you to check out the different resources and see what would be helpful for the students that you work with. Next, we have a couple different resources that are available online. So the first is Love is Respect, which I know Ariel touched on earlier. They do have a parent page if parents are interested in learning more information, but there's also some really great information for students to explore as they learn more about what does a healthy relationship look like, what are red flags in a relationship. They can learn more about this through this website, and also educators can learn more so that they can support students when they come to them and need help. And then the next one is called One Love. And I really want to highlight this one. This resource is incredible. I can't even believe that it's free, but basically they provide training and workshops that are already pre-made, ready to go for educators to use. So you can sign up for an account on their website, and then you complete a training so that they know that you have a good understanding of what is teen dating violence, what is a healthy relationship, what's an unhealthy relationship, that you're prepared to have those conversations with students. And then once you complete that initial training, you get access to a whole library of different presentations and resources. So they have like literally lesson plans of how you can conduct a workshop. And they have different series where you can go through videos. And I believe they offer an option too for youth to get certified to teach these courses. So that's also a great option as well, because when teens are hearing this information from other teens, it tends to be more effective than when they hear an adult telling them all this stuff because, I mean, times are different now than when we were all young. And when they're hearing it from their peers, they know that this is someone who can relate to the things that they're actually going through. And also, just the aspect of empowering youth is really impactful for students to see. And I've seen students that normally wouldn't take opportunities to get involved or take on leadership endeavors get excited about this topic and then learn that maybe they love presenting and they love sharing these things with their peers and helping other people out. So I highly recommend One Love, and I know that link is also in the chat. And also when we think about the different organizations in San Diego County who are doing teen dating violence prevention work, there's only a handful of organizations, and as you know, there's hundreds and hundreds of schools. So our teams can't practically go to every school, but there are still resources out there. If you request a presentation and we're not available, you're still able to conduct that on your end and also empower youth to do that work as well. On this slide, I'm sharing a few different community resources. So these are different resources where people can go if they know someone who's experiencing harm. And these are all local to San Diego. So we have Community Resource Center, Center for Community Solutions, SBCS. And then two that I really want to highlight are Your Safe Place and One Safe Place. So Your Safe Place is located downtown and One Safe Place is up in North County in San Marcos. But these are two family justice centers in San Diego. And what's incredible about the family justice centers is that they're basically a one-stop shop for anyone who's experiencing violence. They have lots of community partners that all meet under one roof to provide services to the community. So I know in the past there's been, sometimes it can be hard for people who are experiencing violence to go to a resource center because they might only be able to provide one or two of those resources and then they'll have to go out to other places. So the beauty of the family justice centers is that they're able to get all the services they need in one location. So all of those organizations, their phone numbers and their websites are in the chat now. And then as Ariel was sharing earlier, hotlines are a great resource for people who want to support students because you don't necessarily have to be experiencing harm to call these hotlines. They're not necessarily crisis lines, but they're lines where people can call and ask questions. So if an educator doesn't know what to do in a specific situation, they can call one of these hotlines and ask questions and get advice without necessarily having to make a report. So we have first the National Domestic Violence Hotline and the National Teen Dating Abuse Helpline. So these are really great hotlines to call if you have questions about how to support a student. And then we also have the Center for Community Solutions local hotline, which is really great for anyone who is local in San Diego and wants to connect someone with resources because they'll be able to get you connected to all the different resources here in the county. And then finally, the Teen Dating Violence Committee does provide presentations to the community. So if you or your school or someone you work with is interested in having a presentation for students, we have this form that you can fill out to request a presentation. And then we'll do our best to get you connected with an organization that's near your area and available on the day that you requested. But if you have any questions or when you're filling out the form, it doesn't quite fit what your request is, I believe there's a section where you can add questions and you can tell me more specifically what you're looking for, and then we'll help you get connected. And before we go, I do want to quickly just share this event that's happening next Wednesday. So this is the Teens for Healthy Relationships Conference for 2025, and it's going to be taking place at One Safe Place, which is in San Marcos. And it's going to be next Wednesday night from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. And the programming is mostly for teens, so they can come learn about healthy relationships and dating abuse. But there's going to be food, we'll have prizes, games. We're going to be hearing from some guest speakers, including teen speakers. So it's going to be a really cool event. And if anyone is interested in attending, either as a participant or to host a resource table or to bring a group of teens, feel free to check one of the links in the chat. The first link is for registration if you're planning on attending and bringing teens. And then the second link is if you're interested in volunteering or tabling at the event. But this should be a really great event. I know it's something we want to continue doing and kind of building traction with so that San Diego knows there's a place where they can bring teens to learn about healthy relationships. So we hope to see you all there. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to the Teen Dating Violence Committee. And this is the email here on the screen, and it's in the chat as well. But those emails will go through to me, and I can help answer your questions. And if you're interested in joining the committee, we can help you there as well. And now I want to open up the floor for we only have 4 minutes left, if anyone has any questions from the presentation. While we're waiting for you all to put your questions in the chat, I did get one question earlier. And this was for you, Ariel. Just a question, if you would mind defining what you meant by mirroring behavior in your first section. I'm not sure if you know the slide I'm referring to.
Yeah, I do. So when I'm talking about mirroring behavior, it could be, so basically if someone is kind of copying or mimicking someone else's behavior, so that could look like saying similar phrases or like using similar language to like what their partner or what somebody who they're close with is using. But it could also be behaviors or let's say that, student Y never got along with student X, and all of a sudden their partner doesn't get along with that student anymore, and like there's like drama being created. That could be considered mirroring behavior of like, oh, well, Allison doesn't like this person, and I'm going to do what Allison like doesn't like or likes. I hope that was a good explanation. I can clarify more.
Yes, that's very helpful. Thank you so much, Ariel. And then the chat is open and anyone's welcome to come off mute if you have any other questions.
All right. See a lot of I see thank yous, and thank you for spending your evening with us. Thank you. We are going to be sending a follow-up email. So all the links, if you missed anything, don't worry about it. We'll send it on a follow-up email.